This video provides a simple guide on understanding philosophical principles, i.e., the foundations and the theoretical assumptions of the disciplines in research. So this applies to PhD students in particular, because often the case you start your PhD and then you have to understand different concepts such as ontology, epistemology, and other things. So understanding philosophical foundations of research to guide you in your research. There are so many different resources out there that explain these philosophical principles that I'm about to explain. However, I found the following guides, the following article by Moon and Blackman to be the best, really, to explain these basic principles. And their guide was, their article was published in 2014 and is called A Guide to Understanding Social Science Research for Natural Scientists. Yes, it might be specific for natural scientists, but nonetheless, they explained the basic principles of philosophy of research in a very, very accessible way, using examples and figures. I put the DOI number there, and I'm pretty sure it's available for free on the web. So why philosophy is important, whether it is social, natural sciences, or any other type that you're doing? Philosophy provides sciences with the general principles of theoretical thinking, with a method of cognition and perspective, with self-awareness. All of these are critical to get knowledge of reality, what reality is. According to Moon and Blackman, the three fundamental elements of research are that you have to, identify and understand. These are ontology, epistemology, and philosophical perspectives. So ontology is what exists in the human world that researchers can find knowledge about. Epistemology is how knowledge is created in research. And philosophical perspective is the philosophical orientation of you as a researcher that guides your action. Before we dive into each one of these and define each one of these elements, I just wanted to point out why is understanding these principles crucial and important. Because failing to understand these principles and assumptions of your discipline can compromise the integrity and validity of your research design, and also failing to understand the principles and assumptions of other disciplines can limit, or even worse, distort your interpretation of the research outcomes. So this is why it's very crucial for you as a researcher, as a PhD student, to understand the principles and assumptions embedded in your research. So let's go back to these three fundamental elements. Let's look at the first one, ontology. Ontology is the study of being in research. So what actually exists in the world about which humans can obtain knowledge? Ontology is about what truth claims can you make as a researcher about reality. There are many ontological positions out there, and let's discuss, two of these, two very different versions of ontological positions. So let's look at one of them, realist ontology. Realist ontology holds that one single reality exists that can be studied, understood, and experienced as the truth. In other words, a real world exists independent of human experience. A relativist ontology, on the other hand, holds that reality is constructed within the human mind, in that no one true reality exists. Instead, reality is relative according to each individual who experiences it at a given time and place. Let's look at the second fundamental element, which is epistemology. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. It is concerned with how you, as a researcher, create knowledge and what is possible to know. It is concerned with all aspects of the validity, scope, and methods of getting knowledge. There are many epistemological positions out there, and we can discuss two very different versions of epistemological positions. One of them is constructionist epistemology. Just to give you an idea, so the constructionist epistemology rejects the idea that objective truth is waiting to be revealed. Instead, truth or meaning comes into existence in and out of our engagement with the realities in our world. So no real world exists, that is independent of human activity or symbolic language. What we call the world is a product of some mind, as one researcher put it best. So how does this relate to your research? If you are using this epistemology, you agree that different individuals construct meaning of the same object or phenomenon in different ways. Now let's look at another type, just to give you an example about what epistemology means. Let's look at subjectivist epistemology. Subjectivist epistemology holds that what constitutes knowledge depends on how you perceive and understand reality. Therefore, reality is pluralistic. It can be expressed in a range of symbol and language systems, and also plastic in that it can be stretched and shaped to fit your purpose. In here, believing something determines what you are seeing as a researcher. Now let's look at the third fundamental element in research, which is philosophical perspectives, also called paradigms. Philosophical perspectives come from ontology and epistemology. A philosophical perspective is a system of generalized views of the world, which form beliefs that guide your action as a researcher. How you, as a researcher, choose your methods demonstrates a commitment to a version of the world and how you can come to know that world. Philosophical perspectives go to the core of how you answer the following question. What is the relationship that you see of thinking to being? Answering this question reveals your general theoretical worldview or philosophical viewpoint. They are related to the assumptions that you make and the values you bring to your research, which lead to your choice of methods. A philosophical perspective is something that is, if you want to think about it, is something that is really personal to you. It gets to the core of you as a researcher and as a person. It drives the way research is conducted, and it is underpinned by your ontology and epistemological learnings, and influences also how you create knowledge and get meaning from your data. Something useful to keep in mind regarding philosophical perspectives is that it is common for more than one philosophical perspective to really resonate with you as a researcher. And also, it is also common for you to change your perspective, that is, your epistemological and ontological positions toward your research over time. So if any of these things happen, that is common. Don't worry about it, because it happened to all of us who have done PhDs. There are many generalized philosophical perspectives that have been defined, some of which can also be viewed as an interchange with epistemological and ontological positions. Here I will go through, two distinct paradigms just to, again, give you an idea, just like what I did with ontology and epistemology. So let's take one of the very distinct paradigms out there, interpretivism. Interpretivism is opposite to positivism, which is another type of paradigms that is very known, in that it attempts to understand and explain human and social reality. If you are an interpretivist, you would seek to understand by looking at individual cases to trace the development of some sort of a phenomena, typically qualitatively. Interpretivist approaches, in this case, make explicit scientists' biases and perspectives that influence data collection and analysis clear. Let's take another example of a philosophical perspective or a paradigm. Let's have a chat about and talk about critical theory. Critical theory aims to challenge, reveal conflict and oppression, and bring about change. If you adopt a critical theory approach, you begin with an explicit ideological perspective that dictates how a chosen theoretical framework will direct data collection and also your interpretation of your data. So, and the authors of the article also provided a very useful table under page 1174, which gives examples of many other different types of philosophical perspectives out there with known, ontology and epistemology, such as structuralism, constructivism, hermeneutics, phenomenology, symbolic interactionism, emancipatory advocacy or participatory feminism, which is another very, very known one, postmodernism, and so on. So that hopefully will give you an idea about the other types that are out there. And if you want to think about philosophical perspectives, the way that I best think about them as well, if it helps you, is there are known they come really with a known ontology and epistemology, but there are also differences in terms of how researchers looked at them and did the methodology over time, for example, or the research, the approach to, say, feminism. Some might have adopted their own version over time, but there are known ontological. Nonetheless, there are, it's underpinned, each of these are underpinned by a known ontology and epistemology. Unlike, you going with ontology and then a separate epistemology over time, they're very different. So hopefully this video really helps you in terms of, and gives you a simple guide to how you understand philosophical principles in research, as illustrated by Moon and Blackman in their very useful article.